Commander Jake Morrison stared at the viewing screen and felt his stomach drop. After 3 months of traveling through empty space, they had finally reached Galaxy AG7. But something was very wrong. The galaxy should have been full of lights. Stars, planets, space stations, ships moving between worlds. Instead, Jake saw only darkness with tiny points of light scattered here and there like dying candles. "This can't be right," said Dr. Lisa Carter from her station. She was the ship's expert on alien cultures and ancient history. Her fingers moved quickly over her computer as she checked the readings again and again. The long-range scans showed massive structures everywhere. Cities, spaceports, industrial complexes. Where is everything? Jake turned to look at his crew on the bridge of the UES Discovery. They had all volunteered for this mission because they wanted to be the first humans to make contact with aliens from another galaxy. Now they sat in stunned silence. "Ryan, what are your sensors picking up?" Jake asked his science officer. Chief Science Officer Ryan Brooks shook his head slowly. "The structures are still there, Commander, but they're all cold. No power signatures, no heat, no movement. It's like someone just turned off the lights and walked away." Amy Foster, their communications expert, looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "I'm not picking up any radio signals, Commander. No broadcasts, no chatter. Nothing. In a galaxy this size, there should be thousands of different signals. But there's only silence." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They had traveled farther from Earth than any human had ever gone. They had expected to find new friends, new enemies, or at least someone to talk to. They had not expected to find a galaxy full of ghosts. "Take us to the nearest structure," Jake ordered. "We need to see what happened here." The Discovery moved slowly through space toward what their computers identified as a massive space station. As they got closer, Jake could see that it was bigger than any city on Earth. The station was shaped like a ring with thousands of docking ports and windows, but no lights shone from those windows. No ships moved in or out of the docking ports. "My God," whispered Ben Parker, their security chief. "Look at the size of that thing. Whoever built it must have had technology far beyond ours." Engineer Matt Davis ran his scanners over the station. "The construction is incredible, Commander. The materials are like nothing we've ever seen. This thing could house millions of people, but life support is completely offline. Has been for a very long time." "Doctor," Carter's voice was quiet when she spoke. "I'm reading the same construction techniques and materials we detected from the other structures in this system, and from the other systems we scanned on our way in. Jake, I think this entire galaxy is like this. Dead." The word hung in the air, like a curse. Dead. An entire galaxy dead. "How long?" Jake asked. Dr. Carter checked her instruments. "Based on the decay patterns and energy dissipation, I'd estimate these structures have been offline for millions of years. Maybe tens of millions." Ryan Brooks looked up from his station with confusion on his face. "Commander, this doesn't make sense. We're detecting at least 50 different types of construction materials and techniques just in this one system. That suggests dozens of different alien species all working together or living in the same area. But they all seem to have died at exactly the same time." Jake walked to the main viewing screen and stared at the dead station floating in space. Somewhere in the back of his mind, alarm bells were ringing. This wasn't just sad or mysterious. This was dangerous. "Amy, keep scanning for any kind of signal, anything at all. Ryan, I want detailed scans of that station. Look for any clue about what happened to its builders. Ben, prepare a security team. We're going aboard." "Sir," said Navigator Kate Wilson, "are you sure that's wise? We don't know what killed them. What if it's still active?" Jake looked around at his crew. They were all scared. He was scared too, but they had come too far to turn back now. Earth needed to know what was out here. "We'll be careful," he said. "Full environmental suits, constant communication with the ship. But we need answers. If something happened to wipe out an entire galaxy, Earth needs to know about it." As the Discovery moved closer to the alien station, Jake noticed something that made his blood run cold. The station wasn't just offline. It looked like whoever had lived there had left in a hurry. He could see through the transparent aluminum windows into some of the compartments. Furniture was overturned. Personal belongings were scattered on the floors. It looked like people had been running. "Commander," said Dr. Carter, "I'm picking up similar readings from the planetary surfaces in this system. Cities that look like they were abandoned suddenly. No signs of warfare, no weapons, damage, no natural disasters. It's like everyone just decided to leave at the same time. Or like they were running from something," added Ben Parker grimly. Jake nodded. That was exactly what he was thinking. But running from what? And where had they run to? Because one thing was becoming very clear as they scanned system after system. Whatever the aliens had been running from, they hadn't escaped it. The galaxy was full of dead worlds and empty cities. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Jake was beginning to suspect that the thing they had been running from was still out there waiting. "Prepare the shuttle," Jake ordered. "We're going aboard that station. It's time to find out what 17 million years of silence is trying to tell us." The shuttle bay doors of the alien station opened with a soft hiss. Jake Morrison stepped inside first, his boots making metallic sounds on the floor. The air was stale but breathable. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the walls, powered by some kind of backup system that had somehow kept running for millions of years. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Ben Parker as he followed Jake into the station. His security team spread out behind him, weapons ready. Dr. Lisa Carter pulled out her scanner and started taking readings. "The architecture is fascinating. Look at these support beams. They're made from some kind of metal that doesn't exist in our periodic table. And these control panels, the symbols are completely alien, but somehow the design makes sense. They walked through corridors that were clearly built for beings much taller than humans. The ceilings were at least 12 feet high. But what made Jake's skin crawl was how normal everything looked. There were what appeared to be restaurants, shops, living quarters. It was like walking through a human city, except everyone had vanished. "Commander," called Amy Foster through the radio from the ship. "I'm picking up faint power readings from the central hub of the station. Some kind of computer system is still active." Jake led his team toward the center of the station. As they walked, they passed through what looked like a residential area. Through open doorways, Jake could see alien furniture covered in dust. Pictures on walls showed creatures that looked like tall, thin humans with 4 arms and large eyes. In one room, toys were scattered on the floor as if children had been playing and then suddenly left. "They had families," said Dr. Carter softly. "Look at this. These are family photos, parents with their children. This wasn't just a space station. This was a home." When they reached the central computer room, Matt Davis went to work trying to interface with the alien systems. "The technology is incredibly advanced," he said, "but the basic principles are similar to ours. I think I can access their data files." It took him an hour, but finally the main screen flickered to life. Alien symbols scrolled across the display, faster than they could read. "Amy, are you getting this?" Jake asked into his radio. "Yes, Commander. I'm running it through our translation programs. This might take a while." While they waited, the team explored more of the station. In what appeared to be a government building, Ben Parker found something that made his blood freeze. "Commander, you need to see this." Jake hurried to where Ben was standing. The security chief was staring at a large display screen that showed a map of the galaxy. But it wasn't the map that caught Jake's attention. It was the thousands of red warning lights scattered across it. "Every red light is a star system," Ben said quietly, "and every single one of them is marked as evacuated or lost contact or no response. Jake, this covers the entire galaxy." Dr. Carter joined them and studied the display. "The dates, if I'm reading this correctly, all of these warnings came in during the same time period. It looks like the entire galaxy was evacuated in just a few months." "Evacuated from what?" Jake asked. Before anyone could answer, Amy's voice crackled through the radio. "Commander, I've got a partial translation of the computer files. You're not going to like this." "Go ahead, Amy." "The files are filled with references to something called the Deep Ones, or those who come from the void. There are evacuation, orders, panic broadcasts, calls for help. But here's the strange part. There's no mention of any kind of war or invasion. The records just talk about people losing the will to live." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean, losing? The will to live? Amy's voice was shaky. According to these files, people would just stop. They'd stop working, stop eating, stop caring about anything. They'd lie down and die, not from sickness or injury, but because they no longer wanted to exist. Entire planets would go silent, in a matter of days. Dr. Carter was studying another set of files on a different computer. Jake, I'm finding similar records here. But these are from a completely different species. Look at this. She pointed to images of creatures that looked like living machines. Robots with glowing eyes and metal bodies. These beings called themselves the Collective of Vorthon. They were artificial intelligences that had uploaded their consciousness into machines. But according to their final transmissions, even they were affected by whatever was happening. How can robots lose the will to live? Asked Ben. I don't know, said Dr. Carter. But their last message says, the silence spreads even to us. We who thought ourselves beyond such weakness find that existence itself has become meaningless. And then nothing. Matt Davis looked up from another computer terminal. Commander, I found something else. These aren't the only species that lived in this galaxy. I'm seeing records of at least 30 different alien civilizations. Some were primitive, some were incredibly advanced. Some lived on planets, others in space. Some were biological, others were digital or energy-based. And, Jake prompted, and they all died at exactly the same time, 17 million years ago, give or take a few thousand years. Every single species, regardless of their technology level or where they lived, just stopped existing. The team stood in silence, trying to process what they had learned. An entire galaxy full of different species, all dying at the same moment in time. Not from war, not from plague, not from natural disaster, but from some kind of cosmic depression that made them simply give up on life itself. There's more, said Amy through the radio. I found what appears to be a final message from the government of this station. It was broadcast to all remaining ships and stations just before the end. What does it say? Amy's voice was barely a whisper. They come from the deep places between the stars. They do not destroy worlds or kill people. They do something worse. They make existence itself seem pointless. We have fought them for 3 million years, but we cannot fight an enemy that attacks the very idea of wanting to be alive. To anyone who finds this message, do not try to wake us. Do not try to restore us. Run. Run as far and as fast as you can because they are still out there and they are still hungry. Jake looked around at his team. They were all thinking the same thing. Whatever had killed this galaxy was still out, there. And humanity had just announced their presence by activating the station systems. Matt Davis was trying to download more files from the alien computer when everything went wrong. His hand slipped on an unfamiliar control, and suddenly every screen in the room lit up with bright red warnings. What did you do? Jake shouted, over the loud alarm that started blaring through the station. I don't know, Matt yelled back. I was just trying to access their historical records and something activated. The main display screen showed a map of the galaxy, but now it was covered in pulsing lights that were spreading outward from their location like ripples in a pond. Whatever Matt had triggered was sending a signal to every part of the galaxy. Amy! Jake called into his radio. What's happening up there? Amy's voice came back filled with panic. Commander, every dead system in the galaxy is lighting up. Ancient transmitters, warning beacons, communication arrays that have been dark for millions of years. They're all active and they're all broadcasting the same message. What message? It's in the old alien language, but the translation program is calling it a wake-up call. Jake, I think we just told the entire galaxy that someone is here. Dr. Carter was frantically working at another computer terminal. This is bad, Jake. Really bad. According to these files, this same signal was sent out 17 million years ago, right before everything died. It's some kind of emergency beacon. Emergency beacon for what? Ben Parker asked, though Jake could tell from his voice that he already suspected the answer. Before anyone could respond, Navigator Kate Wilson's voice crackled through the radio from the ship. Commander, you need to get back here right now. My sensors are picking up movement in deep space. Something big is heading our way. Jake felt his heart start racing. How big? I can't get a clear reading. It's like the space around it is wrong somehow, twisted. But whatever it is, it's moving faster than anything should be able to move. And it's coming from outside the galaxy. Everyone back to the shuttle now, Jake ordered. Matt, leave the computers, we're getting out of here. As they ran through the corridors of the alien station, Jake noticed something that made his blood run cold. The emergency lights that had been flickering weakly when they arrived were now going out one by one. Not because they were losing power, but because they seemed to be giving up. The mechanical systems of the station were shutting down as if they no longer saw the point in working. They reached the shuttle just as more lights died. By the time they docked with the Discovery, entire sections of the massive station had gone dark. Report, Jake said as soon as he reached the bridge. Kate Wilson pointed at her navigation screen. 3 contacts coming from the deep void between galaxies. They're not using any kind of propulsion I can detect, they're just moving through space like it's not even there. Ryan Brooks was studying his sensor readings with a confused expression. Commander, these things aren't ships. At least not like any ship I've ever seen. They're more like holes in space. Areas where reality just stops working normally. How long until they get here? Jake asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 hours, but sir, they're accelerating, and space itself seems to be bending around them. Dr. Carter had been quiet since they returned to the ship, but now she looked up from her tablet with terror in her eyes. Jake, I've been reading more of the alien files. I know what's coming. Tell me. They called them the Devourers, but they don't devour matter or energy. They devour the will to exist. They're beings that live in the empty spaces between realities, and they feed on consciousness itself. Every 17 million years, they wake up and choose a galaxy to consume. Ben, Parker shook his head. That's impossible. You can't eat someone's will to live. Can't you? Dr. Carter asked quietly. Haven't you noticed what's been happening since we activated that beacon? Our ship's computer is running slower. The lights seem dimmer. Even the plants in the hydroponics bay are starting to wilt, even though all their life support systems are working perfectly. Jake looked around the bridge and realized she was right. His crew looked tired and depressed in a way they hadn't before. Amy Foster was staring at her console with empty eyes. Matt Davis was sitting slumped in his chair like he couldn't find the energy to sit up straight. It's already starting, Dr. Carter continued. Just their approach is enough to begin the process. When they arrive, the effect will be 1,000,000 times stronger. We'll just stop caring about being alive. So what do? Jake asked. Run? Fight? Hide? Ryan Brooks laughed, but it was a bitter sound. With what? According to these readings, each one of those things is the size of a moon, and they're not even fully in our reality. How do you fight something that exists partly outside of normal space and time? Kate Wilson looked up from her navigation console. Commander, I'm plotting a course back to human space. Even at maximum speed, it will take us months to get home. But if we leave now, no, Jake said firmly. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. Sir, Kate asked. We're not running, Jake said. These things have spent 17 million years thinking they wiped out all intelligent life in this galaxy. They don't know about humanity. They don't know we exist. That gives us an advantage. What kind of advantage? Asked Ben. Jake walked to the main viewing screen and stared out at the dead galaxy. Somewhere out there, ancient alien civilizations had given up and died when faced with these devourers. But humans were different. Humans were stubborn. Humans were too stupid to know when they were beaten. The kind of advantage, Jake said slowly, that comes from being too dumb to know when something is impossible. As if summoned by his words, the ship's sensors detected the first wave of the Devourer's influence washing over them. Throughout the Discovery, crew members felt a strange sadness beginning to settle into their hearts. But unlike the aliens who had faced this before, the humans didn't simply accept it, instead they got angry. The strange sadness hit the Discovery like a wave. Jake Morrison watched as his crew began to slow down, their movements becoming sluggish and their voices quiet. But something was different about how humans reacted compared to what they had read about the aliens. This is weird, said pilot Steve Mitchell, shaking his head like he was trying to clear fog from his brain. I feel sad, but I also feel mad about feeling sad. Does that make sense? Medic Carol Hayes was checking the crew's vital signs. Everyone's brain chemistry is being affected, but not the way it should be. According to the alien records, beings exposed to the Devourers should be giving up hope completely. Instead, you're all showing signs of anger and stubbornness. Dr. Carter was studying the readings on her tablet. It's like the effect is working backwards on us. Instead of making us want to die, it's making us want to fight. Jake felt it too. There was a voice in the back of his mind telling him that nothing mattered. That existence was pointless, that he should just lie down and stop trying. But every time that voice spoke, another part of his mind got angrier and told the first voice to shut up. Status report, Jake called out. Ryan Brooks looked up from his science station. The Devourers are 2 hours away now. And Commander, something strange is happening throughout the ship. Our computer systems should be shutting down like the alien station did, but they're not. If anything, they're running better than before. What do you mean? It's like our machines are getting stubborn too. I tried to shut down a non-essential system to save power, and the computer refused the command. It actually sent me a message, saying system operational and staying that way. Amy Foster laughed from her communication station. My translation programs just figured out how to decode a language they've never seen before. When I asked how, the computer replied, "Pure spite." Jake walked over to the main viewing screen where he could see the approaching darkness. The Devourers weren't visible as objects, but rather as areas where the stars seemed to dim and space itself looked wrong. "Carol, I need you to run medical scans on everyone," Jake said. "I want to know exactly how we're different from the aliens who died." While Carol worked, Matt Davis was trying to understand the alien technology they had brought. Back from the station, "Commander, I think I know why we're not affected the same way. Look at this." He pulled up brain scans of the alien species they had found records of. Every species that died had something in common. Their brains were highly logical and organized. They processed information in very orderly, rational ways. "And," Jake prompted, "and human brains are messy. We're not logical. We make decisions based on emotions and gut feelings and random thoughts. When the Devourers try to convince us that existence is meaningless, the logical part of our brain might agree, but the emotional part gets mad and tells logic to go away." Dr. Carter was nodding excitedly. "That makes sense. The aliens were too smart for their own good. When faced with a logical argument about why life has no meaning, they accepted it because it made sense. But humans don't care if something makes sense. We care about how it makes us feel." Ben Parker grinned from his security station. "So you're saying we're too stupid to give up?" "Exactly," said Dr. Carter. "We're too irrational to be defeated by rational despair." Jake felt a plan forming in his mind. It was a crazy plan, the kind that would make any logical species laugh. But humans weren't logical. "Amy, can you access the communication systems of this galaxy? All those ancient transmitters that activated when we triggered the beacon?" "Yes, sir. They're all linked together in some kind of network." "Why?" "Because we're going to do something that no rational species would ever try. We're going to wake up the dead." The crew stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Sir?" asked Kate Wilson. "Think about it," Jake said, starting to pace. "The aliens didn't really die, they gave up. Their bodies died because their minds stopped wanting to live. But their technology is still here. Their cities are still here, their records are still here. What if we could convince them to start wanting to exist again?" Ryan Brooks shook his head. "Commander, they've been dead for 17 million years. "Their bodies are dead," Jake agreed. "But according to everything we've learned, consciousness leaves traces. The aliens built machines that could think. They uploaded minds into computers. They created artificial intelligences. What if some part of them is still out there, just sleeping?" Carol Hayes finished her medical scans and looked up with amazement. "Jake, you need to hear this. The effect the Devourers are having on us isn't just different, it's completely opposite. Instead of draining our will to live, it's actually making us more determined. Our brain chemistry is changing, but in a way that makes us more stubborn, more defiant, more human. So we're getting more human the closer they get? Asked Steve. Exactly, and if that's true, then maybe we can share that effect with the dead alien minds in this galaxy. Matt Davis was already working on the idea. I can modify our communication array to broadcast on all the alien frequencies at once, but what would we say to wake up an entire galaxy of dead civilizations? Jake smiled for the first time since they had arrived in the galaxy. We tell them something that only humans would be crazy enough to believe, which is that giving up is not an option, that existence might be meaningless, but we don't care, that even if the universe doesn't make sense, we're going to keep living in it anyway, just to annoy the things that want us dead. As the Devourers drew closer, their influence grew stronger. Throughout the ship, the crew felt the weight of cosmic despair pressing down on them. But instead of breaking under that weight, they used it to fuel their anger. 1 hour until they arrive, reported Kate. Then we better hurry, said Jake. It's time to teach this galaxy how to be human. The Devourers arrived like nightmares made real. Through the Discovery's viewing screen, Jake Morrison watched as space itself began to bend and twist around 3 massive shapes that hurt to look at directly. They weren't ships or creatures, in any normal sense. They were holes in reality, places where the universe had simply given up trying to exist. All systems showing critical failures, reported Ryan Brooks, but his voice was steady despite the fear. Except they're not really failing. They're just deciding they don't want to work anymore. Jake felt the full weight of the Devourer's presence pressing against his mind. A voice that wasn't a voice whispered that everything he had ever done was pointless, that Earth didn't matter, that humanity was just a tiny mistake in an uncaring universe. For a moment, the voice almost made sense. Then Jake got mad. "Amy, is the communication array ready?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Connected to every transmitter in the galaxy. But Jake, I have to warn you. The signal we're about to send will tell the Devourers exactly where we are." "Good," Jake replied. "I want them to know where we are. Matt, activate all the alien defense systems we found. Even if they don't work, I want them trying." "Commander," said Ben Parker, "the alien record said their weapons were useless against these things." "Their weapons were useless because they gave up," Jake said. "We're not giving up." Throughout the galaxy, ancient machines that had been silent for 17 million years began to hum with power. Massive space stations that had been tomb worlds started turning their lights back on. Planetary defense systems that had shut down in despair began tracking the Devourers with targeting computers that shouldn't have been able to function. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Carter, watching her readings. "These systems should be completely dead. But they're responding to our signal like they're alive." "Maybe they are alive," said Jake. "Maybe they've been waiting for someone to tell them it's okay to exist again." The Devourers noticed. The 3 massive shapes in space turned toward the Discovery, and Jake felt their attention like ice water in his veins. They were ancient beyond measure, older than galaxies, and they had consumed countless civilizations. To them, the death of entire worlds was as natural as breathing, but they had never encountered anything like humanity. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," announced Amy. Her voice was strong despite the cosmic horror bearing down on them. "Here goes nothing." Jake stepped forward to the communication array. He didn't know if anyone was listening. He didn't know if the dead civilizations could hear him. He didn't even know if what he was about to say would work. But he was going to try anyway because that's what humans did. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the human ship Discovery," he began. "I'm talking to anyone in this galaxy who might still be listening. I know you gave up. I know you decided that existence wasn't worth the effort. I know that 17 million years ago, these things convinced you that life had no meaning. Throughout the galaxy, ancient computer systems that had been dormant began to stir. Artificial intelligences that had shut themselves down started running their first processes in millions of years. On dead worlds, machines built by forgotten civilizations turned on their sensors and listened. But here's the thing," Jake continued, his voice getting stronger. "Meaning is overrated. Yeah, the universe is big and cold and doesn't care about us. Yeah, we're all going to die eventually. Yeah, nothing we do will matter in 1 billion years. So what? The Devourers moved closer, their influence growing stronger. Jake felt his knees buckle as waves of despair washed over him. But he kept talking. So what if it doesn't matter? We're here now. We're alive now. And we're going to stay alive just because we can. We're going to build cities and write songs and tell jokes and fall in love and have stupid arguments about nothing. And we're going to do it all in spite of every logical reason not to. On the bridge of the Discovery, his crew stood straighter. Throughout the galaxy, lights that had been dark for eons began to flicker on. You want to know what humans are? Jake shouted at the approaching darkness. We're the species that looked at a universe that didn't want us and decided to exist. Anyway, we're the ones who see a hopeless situation and get stubborn about it. We don't quit because quitting is boring. The first Devourer reached the edge of the solar system where they were hiding. Reality began to unravel around its presence. Stars flickered like candles in the wind. But something unexpected happened. The ancient alien weapons opened fire. Massive energy beams that hadn't been used in 17 million years lanced out from dead space stations. Planetary defense systems that had been built by civilizations that no longer existed began targeting the Devourers with weapons that logically shouldn't have been able to function. "It's working," screamed Dr. Carter. "The galaxy is fighting back." But the weapons weren't what mattered. What mattered was what they represented. Across thousands of star systems, the sleeping remnants of dead civilizations were waking up. Not because it made sense, but because a small group of humans had reminded them that making sense wasn't the point. The Devourers reeled back in surprise. For the first time in their ancient existence, they encountered something they had never faced before. A galaxy that refused to stay dead. "You don't get to win," Jake said into the communicator, and his voice was carried by every transmitter in the galaxy. "You don't get to make us give up, because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten, and now we've taught everyone else to be stupid too." The battle wasn't fought with weapons or technology. It was fought with will itself. The Devourers tried to project their overwhelming despair, but instead of finding minds that would accept defeat, they found billions of artificial intelligences and sleeping consciousness echoes that had remembered what it felt like to be stubborn. The galaxy blazed. With light as dead worlds came back to life, not with biological life, but with the will to exist. Machine minds that had shut down in despair 17 million years ago came online with a simple message transmitted on every frequency. We choose to exist. The Devourers, faced with prey that refused to be consumed, retreated back to the void between galaxies. They had fed on countless worlds, but they had never encountered a meal that tried to feed them stubbornness in return. As the cosmic predators vanished into the darkness, Jake Morrison sat down heavily in his captain's chair. Around him, his crew was cheering. Throughout the galaxy, lights were coming on. "Mission log," Jake said tiredly into his recorder. "Today we learned that the most important thing any species can have isn't intelligence or technology or wisdom. It's the ability to look at a hopeless situation and decide to be unreasonable about it." The 17-million-year silence was broken. The galaxy lived again, not because humanity had saved it, but because humanity had reminded it how to save itself.